I also talked about possible emotions coming up rooted in trauma. So this is part of the healing process. And if we have emotions that come up that are rooted in joy, this is part of the joyful experience. So we have the healing process and the joyful experience both in our hearts. We have joy and trauma that live both in our heart. We can't access one with the other. And you know, the reason that trauma ends up in our heart is because it's illogical. If something traumatic happens, it's not based in logic. Think about an innocent child who gets abused. I mean, there's no if P then Q. There's just not logical, right? And so the mental field is so based in logic that the trauma just can't settle there. Of course, the trauma is there. We think about it and it's there, but it really settles in our heart because because the heart is not based in logic. If you feel an emotion come up, something I talked about last time, notice how the emotion affects you physically. Do you start to feel some ache in your back? Do you start to feel some sensation in your feet, for example? Notice this. Notice any thoughts that the emotion might instigate. You know, that's what happens. These emotions come up in our heart, and then our mental field starts, combating them or responding, reacting to them. So you can notice that reaction. You can notice how your gut responds as well. And it's starting to tighten up as a result of the emotion, because this emotion is now available to your consciousness. Is now your gut fearing that certain things are going to change. So you can notice that as well. What you don't want to do is you don't want to control the emotion. Allow it to be there without shutting it down or expanding it. So that's what happens when these emotions come up. We either try to make them smaller, or we do things to make them bigger. But what we want to do is just let it be the size of whatever the size it wants to be naturally, whatever intensity it wants to be naturally, without the mental field or the gut field adding to it. Tonight I want to talk more specifically about taming the mental field, soothing the gut field, and dwelling in the heart field specifically. How do we know we are taming our mental field? How do we know that we are soothing our gut field? How do we know that we're dwelling in our heart field? So let's talk about that. We know that we are taming our mental field if we observe or experience a quiet or a relative quiet. Perhaps you notice your mental field is more quiet than it normally is. You notice that there's less processing of ideas, less simulating future outcomes, less analyzing past experiences. If you notice that's not happening as much, then you're taming your mental field. How do we know that we are soothing our gut field? If we experience a calmness at our core. So taming the mental field is like this quieting, this kind of tranquility, but this soothing the gut field is like this deep sense of calmness, this calmness at the core. It's a little bit different than the taming your mental field. So you can notice that true calmness. You notice the absence of worry about possible disruptions in your lives, changes on the horizon. How do we know that we are dwelling in our hearts? This is more difficult to notice. Dwelling or being in our hearts or viewing the world through the perception of our hearts is a subtle shift, and it's difficult to discern. It's one of the reasons that quieting our mental field and calming our gut field is so important, because it is very subtle. So we need this quiet in our mental field, and we need this calmness in our gut field, so we can really tune into and notice and observe what's going on in our heart fielding, to notice that we're dwelling in there. But here are a couple of things that you can notice to see if you're really dwelling there in your heart. One is noticing how uncertain you are about things in your life. If you know something for sure, you're not totally in your heart, because there's no knowing in your heart. So if you have certainty about something, then that's an indication that you're not dwelling in your heart field. You also might notice a rhythmic energy in the heart area. This rhythmic energy might have a physical sensation, or it might impress a symbol, like I was talking about before, a symbolic image in your consciousness. So in tonight's meditation, I invite you to I invite you to notice this rhythmic energy. It's not your heartbeat, but it's a repetitive occurrence that represents something that drives you, for the better or for worse. So I can share an example of this like repetitive energy that I've experienced in my heart. So think of a gear that's making a vehicle going like a train on a train track, and that gear that's continually making that train move forward. So it's like a workhorse energy. So this is a symbol that I've felt in my heart, this repetitive, like workhorse energy. And this is something that drives me for better or for worse, and something that I'm working on and practicing on is letting go of relying so much on that part of me, that workhorse part of me, and kind of letting it go, because it's creating kind of like this imbalance in my heart. It's like almost like making one side of my heart heavier than the other. So that's just an example. But you might notice some other kind of repetitive energy in your heart area that, not necessarily something that's not beneficial, like I was mentioning, even well, both beneficial and not, but something that is actually really helpful to you. You might notice, but that's just another indication that we're in our heart when we start to notice those things, and it's really the core of who you are. Those symbols, that repetitiveness is really the core of who you are. So when we're moving into our hearts, that's something that we're getting to know better, is that core of who we are. The logic and all that stuff going on here is like not totally who we are, and this instinct stuff is not totally who we are, but what's going on in our heart is really who we are. I'm going to lead you to notice sound tonight to help you tame your mental field. In this first class, we did this. The first class I taught, we noticed the sounds in our environment. The second, we focused on the elements of our breath. And in the last class, we noticed physical sensations. So if you prefer to be focused on physical sensations or your breath during this part of the meditation where we're taming our mental field, that's totally fine. It's not as important what we are focusing on, but how we are focusing on it. All right, so that leads us, we're ready to begin the meditation. All right. Well, go ahead and find a comfortable seated position. If you prefer to lie down, you can do that. But if you find that you focus better sitting up, then do that. Close your eyes. Take in a few relaxing breaths. Inhale. And as you breathe out, feel yourself settle physically. Another inhale. And as you exhale, feel yourself settle mentally. One more focused inhale. And as you exhale, feel your emotions settle. Notice the sounds in your environment. What do you hear? Perhaps a fan blowing or noise inside your house. If it is absolutely quiet, consider that you are listening to the space in between the sounds. If there are multiple sounds, Choose one to focus your attention on. If you notice your attention drift in another direction, exercise your will and choose to focus on the sound. Take a step back and notice the part of your mind that focuses your attention. Notice how this part of your consciousness expresses itself to you. Continue to follow the sounds in your environment. Notice the texture of the sound. Does it have a low or high pitch? Is it a constant sound or disjointed? Is it sharp or dull? If directing your attention towards a sound is challenging, consider directing your attention toward the part of your consciousness that chooses the direction of your attention. What energy do you notice there? Is it clear and focused, or is it distracted? Is it spinning or jagged? Or perhaps it's clear and focused. Apply your will to this part of your consciousness. Use your will to steer your attention towards a sound. And let go of using your will to direct anything else in your experience. On your own, notice sounds and notice the behavior of your attention. Remember, the only control we are attempting to exercise is the control of our attention's direction. Notice what happens when you purposefully apply will to your concentration. Notice if your mental field feels more settled. Now move your attention to your gut area at the belly. What physical sensations do you notice there? Perhaps you notice something less physical, more energetic, a fluttering or a vibration. If you notice your attention drift in another direction, exercise your will and choose to focus on your gut field. Take a step back and notice the part of your mind that focuses your attention. Apply your will to this part of your consciousness. Use your will to steer your attention towards your gut. And let go of using your will to direct anything else in your experience. Can you detect any concerns for change? Can you detect a fear of something in your future changing? How is this fear expressing itself in your gut field? If not, your gut may be in balance and at peace. If this is so, simply stay focused on your gut. If there is a fear, acknowledge this fear. Notice how this concern expresses itself in your gut. It is natural and instinctual to be concerned about change. Consider this possible change in your future, yet also list all that will remain unchanged. Notice if this list soothes your gut. If your gut is still affected, consider that if anything will change in the future, it will be in your best interest. Be open to whatever is the best way to soothe your fear of change expressed in your gut field. Now move your attention to your heart area. What physical sensations do you feel there? Even if the physical sensation is subtle, tune into it. Allow yourself to embrace uncertainty. Allow yourself to simply not know the answer or the outcomes. Feel this uncertainty. Now that you are settling your consciousness into your heart field, be still and wait and trust. Wait to observe a rhythmic essence in your heart area. Be still and wait and trust. Be open to the emotions of the heart. Allow these emotions to surface. Notice them. Dwell with them for however long they express themselves to you. On your own, continue to notice physical sensations in the heart area, rhythmic essences, and emotions that might surface. If you feel your attention drift away from your heart field, notice the part of your consciousness that steers your attention. Use your will to stay focused in your heart field.